Hello everybody, it's Tuesday, it's May 3rd, it's 2011, and this is Day 9 Daily 298. This is actually the second intro I've done because I just got done effing up and announcing that it was the 297th Daily, but there's nothing like being wrong while you're live, so everyone can be here to laugh at you. Perfect. In very exciting news, next week's Fun Day Monday is the Hero Unit Fun Day Monday, where you have one unit that must get over 50 kills, and you must move him to an isolated point at the map, declare that he is the hero, and hotkey him as 0, so that way I can always keep track of him from the commentary position. We want to have some real hero stories. Send those to monday@day9.tv, and big thanks to Reddit for that contribution, because it was them that came up with that Fun Day Monday topic. Yeah, alright. Today is Newbie Tuesday, and the topic of today's Newbie Tuesday is all about the Ghost. Incorporating the Ghost into your gameplay in a way that makes your gameplay better. And before we actually begin the discussion about all the fanciness that is the Ghost, I wanted to do a discussion about math, because I love math, and math is so unbelievably kick-ass. So, this discussion was actually one that I had with my friend Tristan, who comes up, all the time in the daily. But I was having a discussion with Tristan about what he does for work. He's a technical QA. And now when I say QA, a lot of you people immediately think like game QA, which is like the bottom of the barrel, like the brunt work where all they do is play World of Warcraft and try to find out where they can get stuck. And whenever they're stuck, they report the bug to the programming team, the design team, and that's all they do all day. Tristan's job is much more technical. That's why it is a technical QA. So, in the process of trying to find new people to work there, Tristan a lot of times runs by some interview questions and some topics and kind of like what his job is like. So, for instance, he asked me one day, how would you test a vending machine? And he said, be explicit in the details. And this is the sort of thing that he was looking for. Saying things like, I want to make sure that, first of all, the obvious button combinations work. That when I press A1, that food item actually falls out. And then when I press B1, then that falls out, and so on and so forth. Not what you don't want to say in a situation like that is, well, I want to make sure that when you press all the buttons right, that, the proper thing comes out. Because it's important to be explicit, to talk about how you test it. And then you test something like, if I did 1A instead of A1, what if I push those buttons out of order? Would it still give me the correct thing? Does it give me correct change when I put in way more money? Like if I put in $100 for a 50-cent item, would it give me correct change? What if I give exact change? Does it correctly give me nothing back? And to test all those combinations, blah, and blah, and blah, and blah. But there was a really interesting question that Tristan gave me the other day that very much so relates back to what the whole premise of Newbie Tuesday is. This was the question that he said, which was the following. You have a server, and you give this server data, and the server sends the data to a huge group of clients, a huge group of different clients. How do you test this? And I want all of you to note how vague that is. That's all the statement that you get. With the vending machine problem, everyone has a vending machine. Everyone sort of knows what a vending machine is supposed to do and how it works, but you don't exactly know how you're supposed to go through solving that problem. Now, I want to take a step away and talk about math, right? Like, for me, when I think like math, I think about all the solving parts. Like, let's just do some goofy example where I say, let x be an even number. I can say something like, well, I know x can't be prime because all prime numbers are odd, except for 2. So now let me try to prove that x cannot be 2. And then I solve, and then all of a sudden I've shown x is not 2. So therefore I can definitively say that x is not a prime number. So that step of saying x is an even integer going all the way down to x cannot be prime in this problem, I consider bouncing from that first step to that last step. Everything in between, I call that the math. What's really interesting that Tristan pointed out to me is that very first step is an extremely important and interesting step that you do a lot in, mathematical proofs that a lot of people don't think about. It is the statement, let's just let x be an even integer. Let's just let it happen. Because in a sense, in most of the time when you hear a mathematical problem, it's vague. And what you do is you give shape to it. And Tristan described this in the context of this server problem. Again, to restate the problem, you have a server and you're going to take data and feed it to the server, and the server is going to distribute it to a whole bunch of clients. How do you test this? This is the important part of the entire process, is giving this problem shape, because it is an inherently vague problem. So you would say something like, well, what if we want to test something like giving it bad data? Well, what does bad data mean? Well, let's say that the data that we give the server is spreadsheets. So we'd want to give it spreadsheets with tons of cells that are just blank, with things that don't make any sense at all in them, and send them to the server, and we want to do tests on that. And since the clients are interacting with the server, we would assume that not all the clients would want the data in the same way, so there's probably some interface for the clients to access the data on the server. So we'd want to test that. We want to make sure that the computations on the server to crunch the data input into the proper format for all the clients, we want to make sure that that works properly as well. So you starting to see what I'm doing. I'm saying things like, I guess the data spreadsheets. Let's just see what happens there. I'm assuming there's some interface for all the people at the for all the various clients to be able to interact with the server. So I've suddenly taken this very vague statement and I have something that's sort of workable. And the reason I love this entire discussion is that it relates back so much to the methodologies that I think work so well for figuring out how the hell StarCraft 2 works. That when you are given something like Terran versus Zerg, go, figure out how to play Terran. That's a vague problem. I don't know, that's hard. Especially if you are a newer player who doesn't really have that much experience, who may have only seen like 20 games of Terran vs. Zerg from watching the GSL. As you would know, 20 games is really not a lot of games for a lifetime span of playing StarCraft 2. So, how do you approach that problem? And what we're doing today with Newbie Tuesday is we're trying to give that problem shape. We're saying you have to use ghosts a decent amount of the time. And the instant I say something like, you have to use ghosts, now we can begin saying questions and sentences like, did I get the ghosts too early? Did I get them too late? Do I have too many ghosts, too few? Did I use the ghosts poorly? All thanks to the shape that we gave this fairly formless question of how the hell do you play Terran properly? So, I'm going to say the usual approach I do to throwing in a unit in the mix. Are we using the unit properly at the time? Is the lead-in to using this unit good, and the lead-out to using this unit good? In other words, does everything that comes before and after the unit work well? And then last but not least, how does our economy work while we are doing this unit? Because the Ghost, for instance, is a very gas-heavy unit, it's going to leave us with a surplus of minerals or a dearth of gas, so we're going to have to think about that. But I wanted to go through that whole discussion about giving shape, because for any of you who are Protosses or Zergs out there, it's so important to just throw out arbitrary stakes in the ground and to say, I'm going to work around this problem. I am always going to build a roach warren before my lair, and then we're just going to see if that is something that works or something that doesn't work. At the very least, it gives us some structure to begin talking, because it's so hard to approach a vague problem like StarCraft 2 cold. So let's actually jump into some games. I'm going to choose a absolutely ridiculous starting game. Ridiculous starting game. This is going to be a game where we're only going to see the Terran player make ghosts. That's the only thing he's going to do. Is sound enabled? Of course not. Why would it be enabled? This is the Day 9 Daily. Why on earth would I do this any other way? So we're seeing him. He's going to be making only ghosts. That's the only thing he's going to be making. Here is Angel of Dawn, the enemy, spawning in the top left position. And there we see Joe Jabba throwing down a supply depot. Now, what I want to note about this game is how the ghosts end up working in terms of the economy. Things that we end up seeing and sort of feeling, and that are explicit as a result of seeing this little opening happen. Because it's so easy to say something like, well, hey, if I had a ghost at this point in time, wouldn't it have been useful? You know, like if you see, for instance, a whole bunch of sentries thrown down, and you're just like, wouldn't it be good if he had a ghost there? Questions like that always crop up in the daily. And the answer is, Well, if you had a ghost present, then yeah, it would be helpful. But is getting it going to be a problem? And we're going to see immediately some sort of funky things happen, and we're going to start to see the bumps that arise. This game is very much so going to be about all the possible bumps that we would end up seeing. We're seeing JJ Joe Jabba end up getting his orbital command. There's a command center going down, and a double gas. And I think many of you have done like a 1-racks early expand straight into getting this double refinery business going. And we have 2 more barracks going down. This is also fairly typical. A tech lab being added on as well. But of course, Joe Jabba is going to get all humorous with his ghostness. Now, again, we have said you have to try to incorporate more ghosts into your play, just as kind of a staple unit in your build. And as we're going to see, with only ghosts being made, it's going to look a little weird. But use those questions that pop up now that we've imposed this structure. Use those, right? Say things like, is he getting ghosts too early, too late? Does he have too many ghosts? Does he have not enough units because he got these ghosts? And all these are going to start to be very useful questions. Again, we are assuming that we're going to get ghosts. It's not a question of whether the ghosts are good or bad. We've just thrown that stake in the ground. We've given that shape to this problem. So this is a very interesting game. Normally I would actually not even take this game in a Day 9 Daily because it doesn't really serve a useful purpose. I know that all of you are not going to be going only ghosts, but we're seeing sort of this interesting little moment in time where we can't actually do non-stop ghost production. You see these 3 guys that are selected? I can even back up quite a bit in time and note that these guys have not actually been building for a good bit. Well, where was all that gas going? Well, it looks like we're trying to get a cloaking upgrade. We're probably going to want a Mobius reactor. Are there any upgrades going down? Those are going to cost additional gas. We have our expansion up. We don't have enough guys in each of these geysers, but still, we're seeing a really long time spent with nothing exactly going on. I'm even going to leave this resource tab open. And what happens to this Terran player is he realizes to himself, oh my gosh, I have all this extra money. I guess that I will throw down an extra command center. This is one of the most important steps for you to do whenever you're basically experimenting around, where you notice that you have way more or way too little of some resource. In this case, it's minerals. You have way too many of those, so you just kind of spend them however you can. We began with just get ghosts, and now we're having a really early 3rd command center just from resources. Now you can ask the question, is that good or is that bad? This might be way too weak. What we are actually going to notice is that at the front of Joe Jabba's base, he's not going to have nearly enough forces to defend against Protoss. It's not actually that important what Protoss is doing this game, because we're really trying to study how our economy ends up flowing. So we see Joe Jabba doing a reasonable play. If we're going lots of infantry, why would we not get the upgrades for those infantry? And why would we not begin teching up? But in the production tab, notice only 1 ghost is being made. As we're getting this Mobius reactor, oh no, it looks like we canceled the Mobius reactor research because, man, are we broke. It's 2 engineering bays. Man, are we frickin' broke on all this stuff. And it looks like Joe Jabba is going to be forced to get more defense at the front because he's being all strict with himself. I'm only going to be making ghosts, etc., etc. And this force can actually just wander up and kill this. So now, even though this is a ridiculous seeming game, it is ridiculous to say that I will only make ghosts against Protoss, and I will be on the path to victory. That is dumb. That is actually silly. But still, as a exercise, we're discovering a lot of truths. I would always recommend you try this against the computer because it's always really painful when you're like, I'll just dabble against a player. And then like 10 minutes into the game, you're like, all right, I'm dabbling, but I really want to win. I really want to kill this guy's face. So, I don't want you to receive those point losses. But the fun thing about testing this against a human being is that now we can just compare straight up and say, all right, I have 8 ghosts and 2 marines against 8 stalkers, 3 zealots, and 4 sentries. That's going to be pretty tough, maybe. Maybe I can actually get away with doing some EMPs and snipes really well-timedly and pull it off successfully. Maybe that's something you would want to test with a buddy. We have Stim and Combat Shield going down. Again, not very much occurring. Another command center going down. My goodness, Joe Jabba is having a ridiculous surplus. But we still are getting a good sense of what is possible and what is not, as we are now landing this command center and beginning to expand out and explore. We're not actually going to watch too much more of this game because Joe Jaba's just going to go kill the opponent in a second. But I'm really seeing consistently only 1 or 2 of these barracks could actually be making ghosts at any given point in time. If we also wanted to be getting all our fancy upgrades, if we also wanted to be getting the Mobius reactor for our ghost, if we wanted to be able to get higher and higher upgrades, this is not a problem. Getting an expansion to be a planetary fortress, or to be like a screw it. All right, the word's not coming because my brain sucks this week. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. We're not going to have any problem with the money. I'm also saying that we can just easily throw down a whole bunch of barracks and go Marine Ghosts, and it really is not going to look like it's going to be a problem on our money, as long as we're kind of going 1 to 2 barracks worth of Ghosts. And I think that's pretty good. Also, I'd like to note that we can even ask the question, could we have stayed alive at the start when we do this? I actually think that the opening was pretty reasonable by Joe Jaba in terms of all that goody goodness. We're going to watch now some more reasonable games. Where on earth is this? Yeah, here's a pretty reasonable game. There was one more that I can't remember which one we wanted to see, but that's fine. We'll end up watching these. There's going to be 5 games coming up today. This is game number 2. We have Wave in the top right. We have in the bottom left ZTX, which I want to read as ZX. Yes, fantastico. Yes. And now it looks like we're going to be ending up seeing a little Terran vs. Zerg build. Now, you heard me ask the question. Well, actually, let me back up. Last game was all about the economy, all about thinking how these resources work in terms of what we can and can't do. That was a little bit of an extreme game, but we got to learn some valuable lessons about how many ghosts we can really be making nonstop. We also got a sense that maybe an early expand opening is pretty good. In this game, we're going to take a look at also the economy. The economy management is going to come up in every single game because that is a very, very important lesson. But we're also going to explore how on earth does the rest of our build integrate with going for ghosts. And here we're going to see a 2 barracks opening from ZTX against a Zerg player who goes for a relatively early hatchery. And I think everyone's seen 2 barracks aggression. This is actually going to work out fairly well for ZTX. And what I want to talk about is the transition that's going to happen back at home. If this were an actual tournament game that I were casting, I would focus on the bunker rush that's about to happen here. But we want to ask the question, how is the path to Ghosts working? How's that looking for us? ZTX going to wait until he has a little bit of a stockpile of Marines. Spawning pool now finishing. And we're going to see ZTX go for a little bit of a late push. Kind of an interesting play. Because often you'll see Zerg players not build enough Zerglings at the start and instead drone up, which is exactly what we see. You got to be a little bit careful when you do this, but if you time it well, you can be the king of the world. So there we see a bunker going down. Oh my goodness, Wave does not quite have his queen out yet. Has Zerglings already in the wrong spot. Loses an Overlord. Oh no, how tragic. But let's come back here and look at ZTX's base. His money's staying low. He's going for 2 barracks. He's getting a command center. Looks like he's not actually going to invest in this second Vespene Geyser. He instead wants to get another barracks up. I didn't say you had to Ghost Rush for this Newbie Tuesday, although some of you did, as long as you had Ghosts incorporated some way. Now, whether this is successful or not is actually irrelevant. It actually doesn't matter. This is why players like me and Liquid Tyler and a number of other pros do a lot of games just against the computer. Just to see how the economy looks. Just to see if everything can actually line up well. So, you know, if I were doing this build, I would be playing against an empty player. There'd be no player up here. Or it'd be the infamous player 2, the computer AI. I would still build these bunkers and still march these Marines around because at the end of the day, it's all the economy back here that's actually going to be the influence. And what I want to do is be very sensitive to whether I'm having too much of this or too little of that. And we're going to have a couple of bumps, like guys not going in the geysers when we want. But all in all, I think this is a pretty typical looking rush. We have a good amount of damage being dealt. Zerg's actually going to hold fairly miraculously. There's the advancing spine crawler, but the Zerg with speed, just too much to handle. We're going to see ZTX end up getting all his Marinis up. And an interesting little moment that you saw there, very, very brief, but look right here. You're going to see a Ghost Academy get started. and then canceled in favor of an engineering bay. If you think about it, you kind of want this engineering bay reasonably fast to get upgrades. Don't forget that the ghost is not going to be the crutch in your game. It's just having a lot of shit is going to be your crutch in every game. So a lot of marines or marauders or bunkers for defense. So there's nothing wrong with going for that and, you know, spending time and energy on the upgrades, those types of things. Absolutely nothing wrong with this. Yeah, look at that. That's going to be fine. It looks like we don't have enough guys in the gas. And hey, now we're ending up getting a Ghost Academy. So all in all, I overall like this structure of play from our Terran buddy. He does an early amount of pressure. He gets his expansion up. He gets the typical 4 barracks count up. Nearly said 4 gateway, but wouldn't that be awesome? I don't know if any of you guys have played the single player, but you know the awesome, like the pod drop-in. Yeah, you can get that. You can get warp barracks for Terran in the single player, where you just rally, and the Marines fall out of the sky and land. So you can just rally straight to your troops. Oh, praying for Heart of the Swarm that we have that upgrade. Wouldn't that be amazing for Tier 3 Terran? You just scan and just drop 15 barracks worth of dudes there. Oh, that would be the greatest. But, yeah. So we see Ghost Academy going down, the usual upgrades going down. I love the style of play from ZTX, right? Getting all the Marines, and look at a little bit of gas stockpiled. We're seeing, there's the Mobius reactor, another Ghost Academy, because you know what? He's going to try to do something nuke-like, which I'm sure you have no objection to. I don't have an objection to. I'm sure you would love to nuke in your own games. In the ways that TLO does. I'm not going to build my autos, I'm going to build ghosts. He actually sounds like that. That's actually a great TLO impersonation. Ask anyone. Just building my autos? My autos? They're so stupid. We do now see a Mobius reactor going down and wave Ghosts ZTX. Look at ZTX. Don't play poker, ZTX. Just saying. Do you have ghosts or a pair of aces? No. No. Well, I see two Ghost Academies right here. No ghosts whatsoever being made. Why? Why? Why nuke? And now, in terms of the general economy management, I'd like you to note that ZTX is getting a little bit high on money. That's a similar thing we saw from Joe Jabba's absurd game in Game 1 where he only went Ghost, but this can be easily remedied by adding on a bunch more barracks. And it's looking like we have somewhat non-stop Ghost production out of this one. No, it looks like it's actually getting caught up a little bit. Notice how a lot of upgrades are finishing at the same time. Mobius reactor getting done. +1 upgrade getting done. Another Ghost Academy. Again, he's going a little crazy, but even ignoring that, even if we had just built the factory, we would be pretty darn low on gas. And whenever this happens, you want to ask yourself something like, did I spend too much gas early on? That's what happened in the previous game. We saw our player devote so much to building Ghosts that he had no gas for anything else. Probably going to need less Ghosts. In this game, can we get these 2 gas geysers earlier? Well, we just need to ask, when did that orbital command land? A long frickin' time ago. I guess we need to just throw down earlier geysers. And always ask yourself the brief question, did I have enough money to build those geysers? Well, we can clearly see the answer is yes. Again, StarCraft is all about interaction. And even though that sounds way too vague, this is the only thing I want you to do when you're playing. I want you to simply say, let me try to do this, and just think of one other thing that would end up affecting. Right? So say something like, I want to build more infestors. It's a very simple statement to make. And then just say something, well, would that cut into my Mutalist numbers? Would that cut into my this or that? Just do that. Ask 1 or 2 interaction type questions for every change you propose. The more of those questions that you can ask, the better you'll, become good at this game, because again, it's all about the interaction. But try to keep it simple. Don't ask yourself 8, 9, 10 things. That's actually not useful. So in this circumstance, I said, well, we were low on gas. Could we have gotten our gas geysers earlier? That maybe is a solution. Do I have enough money to do that? Yes. All right, cool. Okay, sweet. So now we're seeing, again, very smart play, spending some gas, getting the combat shield. No more gas on these. Really want to keep getting some ghosts. But right now we're really only having, I believe, 1 ghost out on the field. Unit station, yeah, we just have 1 little ghosty ghost. But all in all, this is a pretty darn reasonable thing to do. Maybe we don't want these 2 Ghost Academies, because maybe we're saying something like, yeah, I want nukes eventually, but getting nukes too early is going to be a touch of a problem for me. a little bit of a problem. So now we're going to see the reactor end up popping out. This is, you know, all very good, smart stuff. Doing a little wall off, very Boxer-esque. Probably want some more supply depots there to complete a solid wall. There's going to be a push going on, but we don't care about this push so much because this game's focus is on the economy management. And we're seeing now, finally, ZTX trying to tech up. And I actually think that this move is quite smart. No reactor on the starport, just one medevac at a time. There's a lot of people out there who think that they are not allowed to build medevacs unless that starport has a reactor and build them 2 at a time because they're flexing. You don't have to flex. You can just sort of shrug your shoulders and build more medevacs 1 at a time. And that makes sense to me. If I am building ghosts, that's a lot of gas. What would that affect? Upgrades, they cost gas. Teching, that costs gas. Medevacs, that costs gas. Sweet. Probably going to have to cut back on that a little bit. So it seems to make perfect sense. I don't think there's anything at all wrong with this logic from ZTX. And now he's getting nukes because he is our friend and he values our entertainment. But you're noticing that this money is so ridiculously high. And the important aspect whenever you have a lot of money is not to say, how do I spend that money now? You should say, how should I not have this much money in the next game? That is why repetition is really, really important. And you can rapidly iterate, right? I mean, there's even build order testers where you just hit Alt-3 and you're immediately rebooted and the timer's reset, and there you go. So you can do the same build 4 times within 15 minutes. And all you have to do is say, ooh, that looked ugly. Next time, I'm going to get 6 barracks instead of getting these extra ghost academies because it really looks like I can afford a 6 fast barracks given how much gas these ghosts are costing me and not that many minerals. So we're going to end up, you know, just seeing, looks like now we're going to go for the double medevac. We're going to see the same problems arise. Not enough gas for that. We're making ghosts, a lot of ghosts at a time. Can't really seem to get everything out. Can't really seem to. And we're going to see a pretty easy battle come up. This battle's pretty easy. There's a nuke going down. Some overlords that are freaking out. Yep, poor little overlords. Yep. We have the scan. We have the infestors going on. How wonderful to see all those infestors going on. I want to note, this game example is not really about the ghost usage. We're going to look at some ghost usage games in a moment, but this game is about ghost economy, right? How does the economy of the ghost look? Oh my gosh, excuse me, look at me just going by this gas trail. Can we actually see the nuke? Oh, darn, we can only see the freaking gas trail. It's literally right, it's like right here, right behind my freaking head. Oh, that would have been so rewarding and dastardly. So, yeah, I'm trying to poke around. Yep, just looking at the economy part, because really, the Marines could have cleaned this up all on their own. How wonderful that we managed to get a really good EMP off on these infestors, so that they don't actually end up killing off all our little Marines. But in the meantime, we have one ghost that's just nuking everything to pieces there. But you'll start to see how we managed to get all these new problems to arise by just putting this shape onto the problem of Terran vs. Zerg. What if we threw in ghosts? And now we can begin talking about it. I just think that that point that Tristan made, because Tristan at the end was like, yeah, that's basically what you do for Newbie Tuesday. And I was like, oh yeah, that's so true. That again, you want to just impose arbitrary shape to the problems that you have. You want to just say something like, I will take 3 bases by 10 minutes, or I will make certain to use a Nidus network as the first tech structure that pops out of my layer, or I will get a hive before I get 3 bases, or here, I will get ghosts in the mid-game. When you put that arbitrary structure into your gameplay, no matter what level you are, you begin to motivate your brain's thinking, and you have a box where you can work inside of, and you can begin to solve those problems. So I want to take a look at this is probably my favorite game that we ended up seeing in any of the Newbie Tuesday submissions from Captain Stabity, who uses the F1 split. For any of you who don't know what that is, if you hit the F1 button on your keyboard, it selects an idle worker. So you just do F1 click, F1 click, F1 click, F1 click, and so on and so forth to split your workers. I'm awesome. I just box and click. Bam! Versus I am your king. Now, what you'll notice that we did in those first 2 games is we talked pretty exclusively about what's happening in my base. The opponent was almost just a, formality, a triviality. He was there, but we didn't need him to be there to study what happens at home in our base. But what we're going to see in this game is not only phenomenal economy management that gets me heated, right? I love it. But also a phenomenal use of strategy. And this is the delightful thing that happens when you begin trying to, again, impose arbitrary structure on the problem of how do you win this matchup. And something magnificent happens, right? You discover a solution to a previous problem. What we're going to see is a Baneling bust occur. So we're actually going to watch this game quite closely. I'll even do a little bit of reveal for you. That's right. It's 9 minutes and 55 seconds. Very short game that we're going to be watching. We see I Am Your King getting a very early spawning pool. All right, this is a little too slow, so we're going to speed it up. Captain Stabity is going to be building a barracks early on. He's going to be getting himself a gas geyser in a moment. There it is, going down. Fantastico. There is another supply depot going down. A little bumpy at the start, but we're going to see some absolute brilliance. Here's the orbital command coming up. And a marine. Guys going into gas. Scout coming out. Things seem pretty reasonable. In Camp Zerg, we're seeing now a spawning pool is done. A queen's coming out. We haven't seen any Zergling speed quite yet. There's a barracks going down. And another refinery. This is seeming to be a little bit of an unusual game. Generally, we don't see a second refinery quite this early if we're going 2 racks. We might see it this early if we're doing some kind of tech, but generally not quite like this. And there Captain Stabity sneaks on in. Does he see that there is the speed going down? I don't know. I don't really care so much. And here's a Ghost Academy going down now. When did the Ghost Academy do it? When did the Ghost Academy do it? I got distracted by Captain Stabity. Anytime I finish a sentence in a really stupid way, it almost certainly means that something immediately distracted me, and my mouth was like, don't worry, Sean, I'll handle this. And I'm like, thanks a lot, mouth. It looks like he just threw it down at kind of a haphazard time. Didn't really seem ultra specific, but it was basically a when I could afford it type deal. And a little bit longer. Perhaps was spending some time microing the SCV. The APM's fairly low, which makes this game all the more exciting to me because we're going to see Captain Stabity do some really great stuff. Here's the tech lab going down. Still just making Marines. Nothing out of the ordinary, but the tech lab has pretty nice timing. Lining up with that Ghost Academy, we see a Ghost popping out right away. Marines continuing to be made. SCVs continuing to be made. And now we have a supply depot going down. Notice not forgetting any supply depots. Ghost costs 2 food, by the way. For any of you who did not know, if you don't believe me, look at this. I'm removing the overlay. There it is, 2 food. So you have to make certain that you end up with an appropriate number of depots. Would never want to get supply blocked. And look at this. Right when this Ghost finishes, bam! I just have enough gas for another Ghost. I will actually point this out to you because this is the sort of thing I mean in terms of be sensitive to your own economy. This is an example of a very, very nicely timed build. See, when this Ghost got started, we were down to 27 gas, and upon spending no gas doing anything else, no gas doing anything else at all, and then bam, right when that Ghost is done, we can start another one with just enough gas. So hey, 2 geysers can support 1 barracks doing non-stop Ghost production. That is a useful fact. That is a useful fact. I did not know this until this exact moment doing the daily. Because we imposed that shape and we ended up discovering some juicy nugget that we can use whenever we're playing in a future game. And we're seeing nothing difficult come out of Captain Stabity. He's not doing any sort of weird stuttering with his production. We are seeing a Baneling bust come up from I Am Your King. Sending tons of Zerglings. I'm sure you guys have lost to this a lot. But look at the extremely cool thing that ends up going down. Oh yeah, hey, so Captain Stabity ended up noticing, goodness, I have enough money to build another barracks, and therefore I will build another barracks. Look at the amazingness that happens here. This is Ghosts going to use to solve a problem. This is why this is my favorite game. Look, here come the Banelings. Sniped 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yup. Didn't even get close to breaking that. How many of you have done those stupid wall-offs where you have a depot, a barracks, a depot, and behind the first depot is a factory, and behind the other depot is a barracks that you don't even really want to use at any point in the game, but that you kind of have to build because you know you're going to get Baneling Burst. So you build that, and then you have bunkers behind that, and then another little funky place starport just in case he breaks down 3 freaking layers of freaking buildings. No, you just have ghosts. Done. Easy. How cool is that? And this is something that pops out of a lot of funky, unorthodox builds where things that were standard, obnoxious, successful techniques are suddenly just swept off the table like nothing. If you think about it, if right when StarCraft 2 came out, people were enamored with the ghosts and made a ton of those instead of, for instance, being enamored with the medevac, then all of a sudden you might see people never Baneling busting. Baneling bust might be a strategy that just stayed under the woodwork, never came out. But because no one really played with the ghosts, Baneling busting became a pretty standard, cheesy strategy to win a fast game. But now we are seeing the wonderful, magical truth that is ghosts just ripping apart the Baneling bust. Now what does I Am Your King do? He's in a rough spot, so he's going to try to continue to press as hard as he can. But no good use is going to end up coming out of it. We're going to speed things right along, speeding things right along. And yeah, look at this. Look at this amazing snipe ability that is going to pop out. Looks like we're now getting Cloak, and as we can see, by getting Cloak, it ate into our ability to produce ghosts, because we can really only produce 1 ghost at a time. So here's going to come the second attempted bust. It looks like we're going to get 1. We're going to get some more, but we ended up sniping them a little bit too close, so the Zerglings will bust in. But my gosh, the C10 canister rifles from the ghosts rip through Zerglings so easily. Holy crap, Zerglings are so easy to deal with. Isn't that just wonderful? Wasn't Shay a beauty? Wasn't that just a little beautiful thing? And now, amazingly, despite doing 3 barracks production, we still have enough money to be able to build ourselves a command center. And in this beautifully lined up, nicely timed economy situation we find ourselves in, I can clearly say I did not know you could go Ghost Marine so effectively, so easily. We don't have any upgrades for the Marines at all. The Ghosts are pretty much unleashing all the hurt that we really need. And just delightful, painful hurting going on the Zerg. Easy. Easy, easy, easy. And this is one thing that I really, really, really would like to see more of, is people experimenting with Ghosts, discovering things that were just not a problem. Or that are just not a problem anymore, that used to be huge problems. And we're going to see the Terran player end up winning the game shortly thereafter. Another thing I want to point out is this great Terran vs. Terran game that happened it was on Xel'Naga Caverns. I think that this was the game. Yeah, I think this was the one. We're going to again see some very, very clever ghost usage that I like quite a bit. Quite a bit. Advancing forward, this is Boatman. He'll be our ghosting player. We now see Wooden Spider. Good luck, have fun. We're going to see a ton of bumps happen in Boatman's play. And it's really important that we start to identify all these bumps, because you want to make sure that you do this. Because again, this is one of those things that arises from giving shape to your play. By imposing this arbitrary constraint, I will make lots and lots and lots of ghosts, and that's just what I am going to do. So let's make sure that we identify all the bumps that we can. So that way, Boatman can go back to doing this build that he's going to have a good amount of success with, but without all the obnoxiousness that ends up happening. From the player in the bottom left, Wooden Spider, we're going to see that echoic style of Blue Flame Hellions plus air. And Boatman's going to be going largely infantry. So we're now seeing, looks like 1 Marine and a Tech Lab go down, building a supply depot as a nice little spotter, completely letting that SCV go. How embarrassing, Boatman. Shame, shame, shame on you. And then we're going to see some Marauder and Concussive Shell go down, and another barracks. Oh, okay, so Boatman is just going for a pretty typical 2 barracks play. This barracks could be a lot earlier. Like, a lot earlier. You can actually go supply depot, barracks, command center, barracks, Tech Lab, supply depot. You can honestly always, always, always do that. You have to have really, really good timing, and you can't scout too early, or you're like 35 minerals short. But still, pretty good, pretty standard, pretty typical. So we're gonna see, hey, look at that Marauder pop out right on time. Hey, look at that supply depot popping out basically right on time. 2 Tech Labs end up going down from Boatman. Is that right or wrong? Well, we're actually gonna see it gets pretty hurtful in a moment. Nothing but Marauders going down. It looks like it is a 2 barracks Marauder expand. Engineering Bay going down. Ghost Academy going down. We have this SCV that kind of marched its way down here early, but couldn't really do so much. Now, anytime you end up kind of bouncing between Marines and Marauders, in terms of production, you should say, did I really need the second tech lab? Couldn't I just have gone non-stop Marauders here and non-stop Marines here, and that would have been easier? And the answer is yes. Yes, it would have been. So, hey, look, we're making Marines now. We really didn't seem to need this second tech lab. We could have saved ourselves a little bit of money. We now have our Mobius reactor getting started. We're starting to really, truly see, yeah, we just did not have any real purpose for this tech lab. So that is what I would identify as a little bit of a bump. So we're going to see, hopefully, a ghost get made. Oh, no, it looks like maybe we're favoring the command center early. It looks like we're not doing anything. Boatman! Boatman! There we go. Now finally throwing down the command center. Now, one thing I will throw out there. A lot of times, people will say something like, I want to use timings, but it seems like I can't use timings from my opponent if he's not good. This might seem like a tangent, but we're still going to go down this path because it's actually very key. So I would say something like, if at the 6-minute mark I don't see any warp gate units, I know that he did not go for an ultra-fast warp gate, that he's probably going for a more standard warp gate, so he's probably having a stronger economy and fewer units. That's the way that the timing would be for like a really high-level Grandmaster player. And someone might say, but I'm a silver-level player, and sometimes people don't even start their warp gates until like the 5-minute mark, and then they don't chrono boost it at all, and they get their warp gates by 7 minutes, and then they come in with a ton of units. I can't use this timing because he's not playing well enough. And my answer to that is always that you can use timing, but it's never quite phrased explicitly the way it should be. So, for instance, I would say something like, he's either going for a really good Banshee Harass or a really good Marine Marauder. So, if I think he's going for the Banshee route, I'm going to defend against Banshees. But what you're really saying is, I'm defending in a way that holds off a really good Banshee Harass or a really shitty 3 barracks play. That is what you're really saying. Oh, he looks like he's going for a big barracks play. Great, I'm going to defend against that with this nice defense that's really good at holding off a good 3 barracks play and at a really shitty Banshee play, right? You never want to be completely naked against some sort of player who could go for a really shitty Banshee. So it's okay to use timings like that based on the opponent. But it's really, really important to note that you have to have your own timing really good when you're thinking about your own economy. So for instance, right here, this I would call a bump, right? Where we see this command center, or a few seconds ago, we see that this Terran player is going to get up to 500 minerals. Look at this. He's soaring up, and oh my god, he passes the 500 mineral mark for just a brief period of time, and these barracks aren't building anything. It is okay to be a little hard on yourself there and to say, oh, damn it, what's the player's name? For Boatman to be like, damn it, Boatman, you need to macro better next game. Always remember next game. Not in this game, but next game I need to macro better. And that's fine to do. But what I would never want you to do is to say something like, it's fine if my timing's a little bad, I'm going to ignore that entirely because I'm not at that level yet. It's okay to be hard on yourself and to just accept that you're going to be falling short, but you should always be aware of all the bumps that can happen because you want to at least be having something to smooth out. You want to be having something in some regard to smooth out. So, you know, ignoring this tech lab, that might be something to smooth out, or making sure that I do a little bit better job of macroing, that might be a little bit of a better thing. We also see that we're getting this Mobius reactor really quickly, but then we're not really getting any ghosts, so we haven't really been able to make too good of use of that. Could this expansion have been earlier or later? Did I really need to get so many Marauders early on? Again, we're seeing a good little Marine Marauder. Oh, look at there, some Banshees going down. Oh my goodness. Yep, echoic style in the bottom side. And Boatman, again, whoopsie daisies, letting that money get awfully high, and then kind of discovering, oh yeah, I'm building these ghosts and I have money. I guess I could have built a barracks earlier. So now what you want to say is, next game I will be building my barracks at 40 instead of at 50 food. We will be trying that out. And what's going to be really nice here is that in the last game, we saw a strategy that we were suddenly having an easy time defending against. We saw the Baneling Bust suddenly being super, ultra, crazy easy to deal with. In this game, we're going to see an overall interaction that all these Banshees and all this Hellion business is actually going to be pretty easy to deal with because these ghosts do so much damage to light that they just murder all of these units with relative ease. We're also seeing Boatmen kind of have the same issue as before in the other games. Can't really support more than one, maybe two barracks making ghosts at any given point in time. So there's the cloak, ends up picking it off with the help of some Marines. We do have a ghost here. Ghost armor type is one of the best in the game. It's a biological psionic unit, which means that it's not light and it's not armored, which means that almost nothing does bonus damage to it, except like a friggin' Archon, right? That's like it. And with the range of the Ghost, it can pick this stuff off relatively easily, and they're pretty darn meaty against most of those units, because again, absolutely no bonus. Hellions aren't too good against them, Marauders are not too good against them. So we're seeing now Boatmen. Uh-oh, same problem that we've seen again and again and again. Money is so high, I guess when I expand, I really do need to throw down a lot more early refineries. I guess I really do need to get a lot earlier barracks play if I want to be having a big count of ghosts. And there we see the combat shield going down, we see stim going down. So overall, I would say that Boatman is getting a good amount of all the composition of units that he really needs. He's getting the Marines with their beefy combat shields and their stim. He's getting a good amount of ghosts. He's able to deal with this Banshee and Hellion drop harass pretty easily because he is going to have the EMPs to be able to remove the energy from both the medevac and from the Banshee. Yeah, I bet a lot of you didn't think about the medevac, did you? Ah, that's right. I can EMP all the medevacs, and then he can't do any healing on his Marines that I'm still killing in one shot anyways. Yeah, isn't that cool? Isn't that nifty-tastic? So Boatman, again, doing kind of a classic little glitch, which is to overemphasize the one unit that you're going for. Like if you say to yourself, I want to go for Phoenixes, you'll make like 9 Stargates, and then go, holy shit, I can't afford 9 Stargates. I guess I can afford 2 if I have an expansion. So what happens? We're learning it's like 1 or 2 barracks. That's fine. So we now see, yes, he's continuing along. There's the factory getting made. Very late factory, but it's almost a corollary from... did I really say corollary? Am I really that much of a nerd? As a corollary to Ghosts, we have a late factory. QED. Indeed. As a result of getting all the frickin' Ghosts, we have kind of a late factory, but that actually seems okay, right? These are, again, questions that come up. Is that factory too late? Is it too early? I know it's going to kind of be later if I'm getting the gas-heavy Ghosts, but if it's too much, I should probably be aware of that. Now, look at the size of this force. It doesn't look big, all right? It was enough to hold off all the harassment. Not a lot of Marines, 9 Marines, 4 Marauders, 4 Ghosts. And this is actually looking to be a pretty intimidating force. It's not quite gathered together, but we see the Hellions, we see there's Vikings, we see there's Marines, we've got some Banshees in the mix. But it looks like our Terran is actually going to try to pull everything back and try to rip through it, but keep in mind, these Hellions have range 5. The Ghosts have range 6. So all of a sudden, by stepping even close enough to hit the Marines, all these Hellions are going to be taking massive damage. And look, here even comes a Banshee. Gets picked off very easily because of the insane damage output of the Ghosts. And there's the EMP. It seems that against a pretty varied army, we're going to be pretty much all right. And then we see all the Marines pop up. It's almost kind of funny that Wooden Spider incidentally ends up sending these in the correct order because we are going to see a bunch of snipes go down, I believe. Looks like the Terran's not getting too greedy. Yep, there's the snipes ripping apart all those. Another Banshee in the mix. It'll get EMP'd here in a second, I believe. Yep, there's the EMP going down. And look at the 2 guys just clean up that Banshee. There's the good game, and then Wooden Spider because it's awesome, just as interesting build, and leaves the game. So, in the previous game against the Baneling Bust, we learned that the Ghosts are good at dealing with a strategy that may have given us trouble before. In this game, we saw an overall interaction. We saw that, whoa, this actually seems really good against any kind of air unit, against most kind of harassy mixes, and what's great about a Ghost mix is that it's really mobile. Marine, Marauder, Ghost can walk all over the map pretty easily. They don't have to siege up the way a tank does. You can even cloak the Ghosts and poach out a little bit with him, and he would have to waste a scan to be able to see him, and you can easily waltz in there and begin sniping some things, or even, I mean, hell, you can cloak a Ghost, walk right up next to a tank, and begin shooting it. I mean, 10 damage per shot isn't maximum, but it's still, 15 shots to kill a tank. It's pretty good. That's pretty neat. We're seeing uses for that throughout the matchup. Now, the one thing that I wanted to explore a little bit more is just using the Ghost. We're going to see... All right, where is it? It was a game on Typhon Peaks. Yeah, there we go. This is going to be a game where we examine Ghost usage. We see Phil in the top left, and then we see one of the funniest names I've ever seen, L. Night Salami. Which you'll note is a play on M. Night Shyamalan, but we have L. Night Salami. Fantastissimo. Perfect. So we have L. Night Salami. L. Night Salami is actually going to end up having relatively poor execution at home in his building economy and all the lead-in and leads out to the Ghost. But what we're actually going to look at is not so much that. We're instead going to be looking at how the Ghosts end up functioning in each individual battle. I'm going to actually open up my Firefox for a moment. Great! Now that way I can open up Marky's question grabber. And that way we can end up taking questions once this is all done. Get ready with questions because we'll be having Q&A in a moment. So we're going to see a pretty typical looking, not top level PvT where there's some gateway pressure. Things end up getting a little bit out of order, but that is not going to be the biggest deal in the world. We don't care about that too much. Where is the Ghost Academy going to be? We don't actually see it yet. But I still want to note that I overall like the basics of what L. Night Salami is doing. Again, I mean, we have like a command center with no transferred workers. We want to avoid that. That's again, obvious. But what I love is the idea of, I'm going to get barracks, I'm going to expand, and then I'm going to start going for Ghosts. There's the Mobius reactor coming down. L. Night Salami, again, getting a few too many tech labs. Cannot really support that many Ghosts. So once we see some Ghosts out on the field, we can then begin talking about Ghost usage in battle. And this is going to be one of the most important things ever. And for this, I'm actually going to go to the gameplay menu and turn back on these control groups. So that way we can see exactly how things get controlled. In play, I hate having these things open because I do have a tendency to accidentally click on them like all the freaking time. Okay, so this is the first instance of the Ghost being used in this game. It is to EMP units that are guaranteed to be dead. Now, you'll note that the EMP actually went off when most of the shields were gone anyway. I'm even going to pretend that the Ghost did have full shields. You don't want to necessarily spend any EMP if you don't really have to. Kind of in the same way that you'll see a lot of Zerg players try to bait the Protoss into throwing down force fields. You want to make sure that you end up using it on an appropriate occasion. This might seem a little bit too early. And pretty important thing to note, using my philosophy of improve on the next game. If you're using Ghost for the first time, go hog wild, baby. Snipe every zealot, throw down some EMPs. Yeah, man, they're your Ghost. Tell them what you want to do. And then go back, and every time you see a Ghost usage, say, was that good or bad? Don't do it in the game. Don't be like, should I throw it down or should I not? You never want to be debating in a game. You never want to be trying to figure out what you should do in the game. You want to figure that out between the games when there's no pressure and when you actually have infinite time to think about it. So here, yeah, you know what, that was fucking wrong, dude. All right, don't EMP don't EMP Zealous with no shield. Don't do that. But that's fine. It's fine. You're learning. You're experimenting around. You're in a playpen right now, Monsieur L. Light Salami. And then we're going to see another advancement forward here, potentially. Are there any Ghosts in that mix? It doesn't exactly look like it. We're going to end up seeing the pullback. More Ghosts coming down. Ooh, picking off our friendly Observer. We see more things going down in the Tech Lab camp. And here's, I think, another moment coming up where we have these forces reinforce here. But what we're noticing is that EMP, though absolutely amazing, we're not really going to be able to engage. We're seeing that before here, we threw down the EMP on units that were going to die anyways. Here we're throwing down an EMP on units that we're not quite going to engage yet. So it might not be the best idea then, because we're going to see these shields end up recharging. We're going to see this a couple of times, where we see some EMPs get thrown down by El Knight Salami in attempt to just begin using those ghosts more. And you're kind of noticing that despite, you know, watching games of Bronze and Platinum and Masters, all of them are having the same issue of just way too much money. Way more money than they were initially expecting to have. At all levels today, we have seen that consistent glitch pop up. So we're then going to see Phil, the dangerous toss. The danger toss. Make himself some Colossi and make himself some Stalkers. Ghosts getting made. 4 ghosts on the field right now. 4 ghosts. 4 ghosts. Now, since this is all about ghost usage, I want to pretend that we're El Knight Salami. So El Knight Salami is there taking notes, and what he's doing is saying, was that EMP a good EMP? Yes or no? Was that EMP a good EMP? Yes, no. Should I have EMP'd here when I chose not to? Yes or no? Checking all that stuff off. More stuff in terms of ghost usage. You want to say things like, should these ghosts ever break away from the army? And you should always ask that question. Even in the seemingly dumbest situations. Should these immortals ever break off from my army and do their own thing? What? It's the slowest unit in the game. It can't even shoot up. If it's caught off guard, it could die. Okay, so maybe most of the time the answer is no, but there's probably some place where it's yes. So in this game, do these ghosts ever want to step forward? Well, we don't have Cloak. Maybe we should be getting Cloak early on. Yeah, it looks like we're getting Cloak and a nuke. Oh yeah, by the way, don't you dare queue things up, Salami. Don't you dare. But, you know, hey, maybe it might be good to cloak and walk up here and just shoot all these sentries. Not EMP, but just freaking shoot. You scan, you see an observer, you shoot the observer, and then you just shoot all the sentries. Hey, maybe we should do that. I'm just thinking about ways to just get the ghosts out there into the battle more. Because, as you'll know, the first 4 games were all about economy. We're largely about focusing on the economy and a little bit of the interaction. In this game, it's all about the usage, and it's great to ask yourself ghost usage questions after you have your economy great and crisp and fine and clean and smoother than my face on days when I actually have time to shave. All right? God, I hate shaving. God, what a pain. See, again, we're going to see, all right, we see an EMP go down. Was that a good or bad EMP? Was that a good or bad EMP? We see another EMP go off. You know, even though we didn't get the chance to engage, I actually think that might have been a really great set of EMPs. Maybe that was the case. Well, it looks like the answer is no. That was a freaking horrible spot to EMP. Maybe it was a good spot to EMP and then run away, because what I'm thinking is, ooh, baby, those sentries, they just lost all their energy. The engagement, I think, was bad, but I'm asking about the ghost usage. Was that the correct thing to have done? And I honestly, truly, in my heart of hearts, am a little bit torn. And what I would do if I were El Knight Salami is I would rewatch that a couple of times and come to a conclusion. When I see an army about that big, I'm willing to throw an EMP down on his sentries and then retreat. Boom! I've made the decision. Every single game thereafter, I will make that decision. Woo! Next game's going to be awesome, baby. Next game's going to be clean and smooth. Woo! Hey, we just lost our army. We can't do much right now. Should my ghosts be breaking away and doing their own thing? Should I be trying to do a nuke here? Should I be trying to do a nuke in here in his base to try to, like, pull all these guys away? Looks like El Knight Salami ending up losing a couple of dudes, and now he's going to come for it again. Hey, there's the EMP. It's looking pretty good. Yeah, EMP to do some retreating. Wow. Hey, that was an amazing little engagement there. Ghosts dying. That's always so funny. Ah! Oh, that's so golden. All right, let's slow it down for a moment. Yeah, we see there's the stim going down. This is a small-ass army for Terran. That is a small army for Terran. So we saw one EMP go down. Are we going to see another one go down? Yeah, we see another EMP go down. I actually think that those EMPs and this engagement were incredibly, incredibly good. And I would again do a little bit of rewinding action, do a little bit of unit counting, and say, okay, when I have this mix against that mix, even if I'm in a terrible spot, a la this small little valley, I'm still going to go for the engagement, and it's going to be awesome. Gonna be awesome. Gonna be so awesome. So again, shall we be putting pressure on in terms of ghost usage? I think that that was a pretty phenomenally amazing engagement that really, if those were Marauders instead of Ghosts, would have gone horrifically for our Terran buddy. Like, horrifically. Shouldn't say that word. Shouldn't have put the ifically there. Wow. Wow. Oh, alright. Oh, there's the pylon going down. We're going to speed through this. I believe this game's a little longer. Is that accurate? Yeah, it's got 5 more minutes, so we're just going to speed it right on up. The ghosts have only really been used in direct engagements. We've used it for harass. We saw an EMP that we really didn't like. This one's pretty cool. Just doing a little burst through here. Hey! Look, we have yet another interesting action from our little ghost. A cloak nuke defense. I would even maybe throw in a scan there. And this is actually one of the more incredible maneuvers that we saw. I mean, look at Salami's APM. It's not high. His money is very high. He is not a Masters level player, yet suddenly, just by forcing himself to just get some ghosts, we're realizing, hey, if we're in a tight angle and an army's coming up, we can just cloak, send a nuke, scan. Is there an observer around? Snipe the observer. Protoss is gonna have to probably pull out of that valley or kill off your forces real fast. And you can always count on those force fields being up, and you can get a little bit of leeway hiding behind those force fields. Awesome, really awesome ghost usage that we saw right there from El Knight Salami, whose name is continuing to be funny. And here, we did not see an EMP get thrown down. We did not see an EMP get thrown down on that retreat. It looks like he was pulling back to join with the rest of his army. And again, we see it looks like late EMPs going down. In fact, almost no EMPs going doing but El Knight Salami should definitely be doing that next game. So interestingly, we saw some circumstances where you should be EMPing, where you shouldn't be EMPing. There's another very nice nuke placement. Why is that so nice? Because all the rally points will be coming right down there, so it's an easy way for us to clear that out while we kill this off. Excellent, excellent little use of ghosts by a player who's, you know, just like you and me, right? Not going to be one of like the players who's all over MLG or IEM or one of those types of things, but your average Bear Joe who just likes playing StarCraft threw in some ghosts and discovered some pretty magical things. Let's take some questions and wrap this bad boy up. Want to just note, while questions are coming, there is going to be no Newbie Tuesday next week because it is my final week of graduate school. That is right. On Friday, May 13th, I will have a Master's in Fine Arts of Interactive Media, or a Master of Fine Arts in Interactive Media. Yes. 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 Fan-frickin-tastic. Excellente. So here is an interesting question from Paradox GT, who says, Dear Day 9, are there other better uses for ghosts? Can you have better harass or earlier uses with maybe a few ghosts? What is the synergy of the ghosts in a standard Terran army? So, I want to come back to the way I opened the daily, which is about giving shape to vague questions, right? Are there other better uses for ghosts other than just, you know, standard EMPs in the army? I would love if you just did the same methodology of just imposing structure on the usage of your ghosts. For instance, I will only use these ghosts for snipe. Or, I will only use these ghosts for nukes and for regular combat. Or, I will only use these ghosts for the cloak and harassment ability. And then as you do that, as you impose these stupid constraints, you can have a game where 95% of your ghosts are snipes, and even in your snipe-only game, you say, yeah, but there's a cluster of infestors. I'm going to EMP because that's the obviously correct decision to do. But then you discover that a snipe-heavy ghost army actually works out amazingly well. Start just putting some constraints on yourself, you know, like, should you use harass with ghosts? Well, I'm going to impose the following. I will make lots of ghosts this game, and never will they be part of my main army. Never, ever will that actually be the case. Yeah. Yeah! Let's see here. Dum-dum-dum-dum. Trying to think, less people asking about the... Yeah, you know, there's a lot of people asking about the upcoming change and the changes that are coming up on the public test region. Like Umbre Eternus is asking about the public test region. There's some other people asking about that, so I can just give them props. Deadlycraft asking about that. What about the ghost change coming up where it's 200 minerals, 100 gas? The important thing that I'm always trying to convey in all these dailies is that I don't want to tell you exactly what to do. I don't want to say something so much like, here's a great build in Terran vs. Zerg, and you say, awesome, and you go use that build and have some success with it. I want to give you the tools so you can come up with your own builds and styles to where you can even never watch any StarCraft media, no Day 9 Daily, no replays at all, and you can just sit and learn on your own. And the most important tool is to just begin asking yourself some questions and imposing some structure. You saw all the things that came into play here. Is my economy, how does my economy being effective? What do I have too much of and too little of? How do I not die early on with a strategy? Am I using these units properly? Are the lead-ins and lead-outs good? Like the 2 barracks expand that we saw against Zerg looked great, but then there were some economy bumps while we were doing it. Doesn't mean that the lead-in isn't good. We're starting to learn all these good ways to talk about it. So important that you look at those and say, hey, this could be good. Even a question popping up, how will it affect mech? Give it a shot. Try to go mech and see how some little ghosties feel in that mix. So let us ask one more question. One more question. Let us see here. Great question by Milo1024. Dear Day J, that is me. When is it the right time to add on additional unit-producing structures and tech structures after expanding? The answer lies in 2 things. What is your goal, your eventual goal, and what does your economy look like? And you will have to do a lot of games to test this. Not a ton. I mean, probably like 10, 15. But 10, 15 games, if you're playing by yourself against the computer, is like an hour, maybe 2. And if you listen to amazing music like I do, no problem. Best 2 hours of your life. So when I say a goal, just have a simple freaking goal about unit composition. Like, I want to go Marine Ghost against Zerg en masse. So I guess I'm going to need some freaking barracks to do that. So when I expand, I'm starting to notice, whoa, I'm getting a lot of money. I'm going to add on 3 more barracks right when I expand. You do a test on that, and what do you discover? You are broke fast, like really fast. Better not do that next time, and then you add on 2 barracks instead of 3, and things end up working magically. The important thing is to iterate, test, have fun, listen to good music. That's going to wrap up the Day 9 Daily. Bam! Done! The dailies in the upcoming days are going to be a little weird. I can't quite update my computer with better drivers and a good reformat. But, hi Asher, I'm doing a daily and I left my door open because my computer's overheating.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
But say hi. Everyone say hi to my roommate. That's Asher. Woo, it's Asher! But for next week, yeah, it's going to be a little bit of an adventure because I need this computer to stay functioning because I have to do final projects. And, you know, reinstalling everything would take a few hours, and I don't have a few hours free. So what that means that we're going to end up doing is just risking it with these dailies. They're going to be a little bit more straight-up individual game focus. So there's going to be no Newbie Tuesday next week. Because after May 13th, I go to Korea to visit my brother. Yes. Yes. Cool. That's going to wrap up the daily. Is there anything else that I wanted to say? Yes, for next week's Fun Day Monday, it is the Hero Unit Fun Day Monday contributed by Reddit. And there was an individual who came up with the idea, and I need to look up his name and thank the shit out of him because that idea is brilliant. You're going to select one unit. He will be your hero, and you're trying to get him over 50 kills. Hotkey him as 0 and move him to somewhere where it is clearly just him and say, I have now pronounced you as the hero unit. So that way, both you and the opponent know that you're doing Fun Day Monday. Yes. That's going to wrap it up. Thanks so much for tuning in. You're all very beautiful people. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.